So oftentimes when I go to give sermons, one of the questions I like to ask people, not people ask me, but I like to ask the people are, in your opinion, who are the three most important people that without them, Buddhism would not arise? Who are the three most important people in the history of Buddhism, from its start to its finish? Obviously, the number one most important would have to be the Buddha. Without the Buddha, there would be no Buddhism. I mean, it's literally named for him, right? However, when you ask a lot of people, people tend to have their favorites. They can either say Sariputta, because he was so helpful and he was so smart and wise. He had such a great life. Some people say Maha Kassapa, he was like the leader of the Sangha. He did the first Sankhayana, which is the first Sangha meeting after the Buddha had passed away. However, I propose this. To me, I think one of the three most important people had to be Yasodhara. Now, this is probably not a very popular opinion because one, she was a woman and she wasn't that famous. So why would we say that Yasodhara is one of the most important? Because without her, this would not have happened. Well, to look to that, I would like to remind you of a story of when the Buddha first made his aspiration to become a Buddha. So back a long time ago, if I'm not mistaken, I think the Buddha of that era was named Kassapa, but I could be mistaken. Back then, well, the way it works is the Buddha is like a president. There's always a president at some point, but it's not the same person. Each person comes and takes the position, and then eventually they change. So a long time ago, they call it for like over incalculable periods, like numbers you can't even count. There was a Buddha, and in that time there was a Brahmin who had special powers. I guess he was good at meditation, so he could fly or whatever, according to the stories. So he was flying around one day and he saw a bunch of people, a bunch of lay people out in the fields, and they were clearing a path. Like they were cutting down like weeds and grass and cutting a path. And so he came down to the earth and he says, "Hey, what are you guys doing?" And they said, I'm sorry, I think the Buddha's name is Dipankara, I think. They said, the Buddha Dipankara is coming. And he said, a Buddha is alive on earth? And then he was so excited, he says, I want to help too. Well, they said, well, we already got most of the work done, but there's a little patch over there that has water that we can't fix in time. So he says, I'll do that part. So he goes and uses all his ability, his strength, his power, his ability, and he started clearing the area. Well, as he cleared the area, he was unable to clear it in time. So when the Buddha arrived, there was like a couple feet left of area that was still wet and muddy. So in his last moment, he decided, okay, I don't want my work to go in vain, so I'm going to lay down on the floor, face down, so that the Buddha and all 100,000 monks can walk on my back and they won't get their feet dirty. Not only did he lay down on the floor, he also undid his hair, so back then they have long hair, and put his hair out on the floor too, so they could walk on the hair, so that, they wouldn't get dirty. Now you have to understand, back in those days, a person's head, a person's hair, their, like how dirty their clothes are, it shows a lot about who they are. And this is a Brahmin. He's like the highest caste system of India. So there's a lot of ego that goes into there. So then he laid down, the Buddha and all his followers walked on his back, and there was a lot of, people walking on him, and he achieved it. After that achievement, he asked the Buddha and said, I would like to request that one day I could become a Buddha myself. I want to be a Buddha myself one day. Well, the Buddha looked into the future and says, yes, you will achieve that. You will be known as the Buddha Gautama. You will be born in an era where people have 100 years old of a life cycle. You will only live to be 80. You will have this person and that person, all these things as your assistants. So after giving the prophecy, that man, the Brahmin, was now known as a Bodhisattva. A Bodhisattva is only a Bodhisattva if another Buddha has given the prediction. So after receiving the prediction, something very interesting happened. Because if you remember why I started this story was we're talking about Yasodhara or Pimpa. Well, what happened was there was a young lady there who was in that area of the fields also. And she was helping to clear the area also. She had watched this man fly in the air, come down, clear all this land by himself, then sacrifice his body and his pride and his ego to let 100,000 monks and the Buddha walk on his back. And after she heard this man, instead of asking for riches or fame or power, he asked to become a Buddha. Well, for her, she was so impressed by this man. She wasn't attracted to him physically. That is, she didn't think he was handsome or sexy or wanted a husband. But the one thing that she was attracted to was his spirit. This is very important. Yasodhara back then wasn't attracted to the Buddha for how good looking he was, but attracted to him because of his spirit. It's hard to find a person like that. So once he achieved the prophecy and became the Bodhisattva, guess what she did? She went to the Buddha also and says, the Buddha, after all my sacrifice and all my hard work and my dedication, I only ask one thing. I would like to be the assistant to this man. I want to be his soulmate. I want to be born with him every life, only to assist him in achieving his goal. And immediately, what did the Brahmin say? The Brahmin says, no, I don't know you. I don't know who you are. And I already made my journey. I'm going to do my own journey. I don't know who you are, and I don't know why I should let you join my journey. And the Buddha says, Brahmin, before you make a decision, think about this. The journey to Buddhahood is long and hard and stressful. A lot of people will fail, a lot of people will give up, and a lot of people will not succeed. One thing that will greatly help your journey, that will greatly help your achievement, is someone who's willing to support and help you. Well, after he heard that, I think not only did he think about it, but he also trusted the Buddha. So he says, fine, I will accept it. And from that life on, almost every single life that he was born as a Bodhisattva, she was born as his companion. We think about Buddhism as the Buddha's religion. But how could the Buddha get here without the support of his soulmate? Without his soulmate, think about how many times in your life that you feel, in Thai we call it taw tae, which means you want to give up. You feel like you're tired and you know what, maybe I want to change my mind. How many times did you have your mom to tell you, don't give up, son, keep going, son? Or your wife to tell you, hey, remember you promised, you said you would do this. Or even your kid would say to you, Dad, you told me you would never smoke again. Why are you smoking again? So many people have told the story where I quit smoking because my son asked me to. I quit drinking because of my wife. I finished school because of my mom. You need that person with you if you're going to take that journey. So for all those lives, who made the biggest sacrifice? Everyone else practiced Buddhism and trained themselves so that they could become enlightened, so that they will become free. And for them, if you think about it, even if you want to just compare the time, how long did the Buddha take? It took him 4 asankhayas and 100,000 kapas, which is a huge number. Well, it took Yasodhara almost the same number. But she didn't do it for enlightenment. She did it to support her man. Even Sariputta was just 100,000 kapas. Moggallana, 100,000 kapas. But for a Buddha, it's 4 asankhayas and 100,000 kapas. It's crazy number. So without Yasodhara, his future wife and also his future student, he wouldn't have been able to do it. Now, who would be the third most important person to Buddhism? Without this person, Buddhism would not exist in the world. Who would we say would be the third most important? Well, like I said, people would say, well, Sariputta, Moggallana, Kassapa, you have Mahakachayana, you have so many people. But interesting enough, people only usually say monks. And if they say monks, they usually say the famous ones. Maybe Ananda. But to me, do you know who the third most important is? Tewatatta, the Buddha's cousin and arch enemy. Why do I say that? If you really understand our Buddhist religion, you will understand that our religion is based on duality. Our Buddhism is not about pure good. It's about good contrasted with evil. Good actions are only good if you contrast them with evil. If you have a hero in your favorite sitcom, what do you have to have? You have to have an enemy. You have to have a bad guy. Well, who was the bad guy in the Buddha story almost every life? It was Tevatatta. Now, there's something very interesting about this man that a lot of people don't think about. When we think about Devadatta, what do we think? Pure evil. The worst person on earth. Pure evil. Right now, he's in hell for trying to kill the Buddha many times. And he's actually in hell because he made the Buddha's foot bleed, he's the only one in history to make the Buddha bleed. So he has the worst punishment in the history of mankind. However, I say to you that he's almost the most important. Why? Now, if you look at all the scriptures, especially in the Dhammapada, you'll notice something. Or especially if you read the Chataka stories, you'll notice something that every life the Buddha was born as a king. He had an enemy. But who was that enemy? Was he a peasant? Was he an ugly farmer? Was he a poor man? He was a king. Every life, like the life where the Buddha was a golden banyan deer, he had an enemy. Not an enemy, but a guy who he compared himself to, who was another golden deer. Another life, he was a war horse, a really powerful war horse. Well, guess who the enemy king was? One life, he was a monkey, king of the monkeys. Well, guess who the prince was? All these lives where the Bodhisattva was born as something powerful, something special. Why was the Bodhisattva born as a king? Why was Moggallana and Sariputta always born as kings or prince or powerful war leaders or horses? Like, how come? Well, we would say, well, the reason Ananda got those positions, the reason the Buddha got those positions, the reason Sariputta and Moggallana got the positions is because they did so much good things and good for the world. So they deserved it. Well, then in that case, why did Devadatta get to be the only golden deer? And there's only 2 golden deer in the whole world. He's one of them. There's only 2 big kings in the whole kingdom. He's one of them. There's only 2 princes. He's one of them. How come? So that goes to lead me to think that Devadatta was not pure evil. He must have done a lot of good for a lot of people to be able to be a prince, to be able to be a king, to be able to be a golden deer and have 500 followers in a big kingdom. He had to have been somebody special. Well, if he was someone doing good things, then why do we consider him so evil? Well, we only consider him evil because he was what we call forever second place. He was probably the second most powerful person in the history of the world, second to the Buddha. So he's the kind of guy who's like training for the Olympics, working hard, working out, doing it fairly honestly, and then always lose to Michael Phelps. So he would be like the Ryan Locke of Buddhism, Or you could even be like, for example, you have someone like LeBron James, the greatest player of all time. And then you have someone else like maybe, I don't know, Kevin Durant or Charles Barkley or someone who's not as good, who didn't win championships. Well, then what? Well, your name becomes, then now you're the bad guy. You're not as good. And so that's the thing. In every single situation that the Buddha had, he had to have drama. He had to have someone challenge him. Well, who was qualified to challenge the Bodhisattva? It had to be someone who was close to being a Bodhisattva, such as Devadatta. If you remember, I don't know, have you guys ever heard the first story of why Devadatta and the Buddha became enemies for life? Did you ever hear that story? Back then, he was not the Bodhisattva yet. One day, 2 traders, like 2 merchants, they got together and they said, hey, we're going to cross the river to Queens and we're going to go sell some stuff. And they looked at each other and said, you know what? It's not very smart for both of us to go together at the same time because we're just going to go to the same houses, sell the same things, and we're going to cut each other's profit. So back then they weren't enemies yet. So what do you think? Should we go, who wants to go first? Who wants to go second? Well, trader number 1 says, here, trader number 2, you choose. And trader number 2 says, okay, well, I think that if I go first, I can set the price. Nobody knows what the things are valued, so I can sell it for whatever price I want. And then I can make a big profit. Everybody will see my items and get excited, and they won't care about the other guy's items. So he says, trader number 2 says, I'm going to go first. Well, then trader number 1 thinks in his mind, and this is a very interesting point, is that, like I said, our Buddha deals with duality. He says, that's okay. If you want to go first, I can go second. No problem. And the reason why, he said, well, if you go first, you have to haggle for the price. $5, $4, $3, $3.50, $4, $3.75. Okay, $3.75. You have to argue with people all day. But if I go second, I go there, the price is already set. You paid $3.50 for this, pay me $3.50 for it. So I don't have to argue with anyone. Also, everyone has also already seen merchant number 2 stuff. Well, then or merchant number 1 stuff, you can see my stuff, and you just know mine is better. So you have something to compare to. So in that case, they said, fine, you let the first merchant go first, or the second merchant go first. I forgot which one was which, but one merchant goes first. Well, the whole story goes, he went to this house with an old lady and a young granddaughter. Well, this house used to be belonging to a very rich man, but the rich man died. So then the house was very old, no one took care of it, it was very dusty and dirty. Well, the merchant, he saw that there was a tray in the corner under the pile of junk. And it was dusty and it was black. But he saw that like the way the tray looked, it was very strong, maybe very valuable. So he told the lady says, can I please trade you for a toy for my granddaughter? And he looked around, he says, what they have here is so valuable, but they don't know. So he went over to the tray, took his nail and scratched it, and saw that underneath it was pure gold. So he says, okay. But now he thinks, I want to get a profit. I want to buy this for the cheapest amount possible. Well, he then said to her, all the things that you have here are worthless. Like nothing you have here can trade me for anything. So I can't trade you. The grandmother says, please, please, my granddaughter hasn't had a toy in so long and feel bad for her. There's no men in the family. Please have mercy on us. And he says, how about this? I'm going to go trade other places first, and I'll come back here last. And if I have anything left that I can't sell, I'll trade you for something dirty and pathetic like that stupid tray. So just save the tray for me, and I'll trade you for a toy later. And he was thinking, I'm going to go sell everything I have and come back and get a huge profit on the tray. So he left. Well, he might have took a little bit too long, because the second trader came, stopped at the first house, and the same thing happened. He says, I have things to sell, I have things to sell. Then the old lady comes out and says, I wish I had something of value to trade you. So I just want a toy for my granddaughter, but I know that nothing in my house is valuable, so don't waste your time here. Well, the trader was an honest trader. And he looked around and says, wait a minute, this is a big house. And he looked around and says, hey, I can't trade you either. She's like, yeah, I know, because I'm poor and broke. She's like, no, the opposite reason. Everything you have here is worth more than everything I have. So if I trade you, I have nothing of value to give to you. I could give you everything for just that tray, and I wouldn't even be able to pay you for half the cost. She's like, what? He's like, look. And he scratched it for her and showed her, this is solid gold. This is worth like 20 of my carts. And she says, because you're honest and I didn't know, you take this tray and just give me one toy. And the merchant says, no, you take everything I have. And all I ask is for the tray and 8 copper coins for the boat. And the lady says, deal. So they traded. Well, the second merchant was so happy, he took the tray, 8 silver coins, 8 copper coins, went to the ferry, took the ferry across, and was so happy that he finished his work in 5 minutes. The first trader came back at the same time and was like, okay, old lady, I'm done with my job today. I'm ready to trade with you. And she's like, get out of here, you scoundrel. You lied to me. You're a horrible person. You tried to trick me. I already know the truth, and the tray is gone. The guy didn't care that she said he was a bad person. All he heard was, the tray is gone. Where is the tray? She said, that honest merchant already traded with me. And that's it. He didn't care. He left everything on the floor and he said, where did he go? Said, well, he went to the ferry. So he ran to the ferry and says, come back right now. That's my tray. We had an agreement. I saw it first. I made a deal for it first. It's mine. Well, the other merchant on the ferry says, no, I got it. I traded honestly. I'm not going back. And right there, that merchant was so mad that, this is the story, he says, he goes down onto the floor and picks up 2 big handfuls of sand. Like, imagine how big their hands were back then, because they were big dudes back then. They weren't, their life cycles was longer than ours. He picked up 2 giant handfuls of sand and says, what we call the atitana. He says, just as the number of sand in my hand, may I follow you every life until I get my revenge. And that is why, up to the number of sand in 2 big handfuls, that's how many lives that Thewatat has followed our Bodhisattva. And that's why they were partners. They were partners in life. And so that is why I say that like the 3 most important people in Buddhism was the Buddha. Because he was the one that did all the work. He did so much of the work. He made so much of the fight. But Yasodhara was the one who supported him. Without support, just like a fighter without a trainer, how do you get there? You can't. But most importantly, actually this is a good example. Right now, if you follow like mixed martial arts or boxing, you'll notice that there's some fighters who are very strong and very good. But for some reason, they're not popular. Nobody knows who they are. And the reason is they don't have an enemy. Muhammad Ali had like George Foreman, or I'm not sure who he had, I forgot. But in this case, you have someone like Jose Aldo, was like the champion for almost like 10 years or something. And nobody knew who he was until he fought Conor McGregor. Once he fought Conor McGregor, suddenly everyone knows who he is. And all these fighters are the same. Like Nate Diaz fought Conor McGregor and beat him. And now he's like so rich now because of that 2 fights that he had. It's the same thing. The Buddha was only powerful and strong because he had a strong enemy to fight. Now, we talk about the support and we talk about the enemy, but why was it called such a sacrifice? Well, think about this. First of all, those 3 people took the longest time. They worked for the longest time to achieve their goals. The Bodhisattva worked for 4 asankhayas, 100,000 kappas, to become from Bodhisattva to Buddha. Yasodhara took almost the same time to support him. Thewatat also took the same amount of time to challenge him. Just for that alone, they took the most time. But the reason they deserve our respect is the sacrifice they made. Think about this. Every life that the Bodhisattva challenged himself, he had to give up his kids, he had to meditate a lot, he had to contemplate a lot, he had to work hard, he had to leave his family, he had to sacrifice his love. Who was left at home every life? Who was the woman that got left behind every life? Who was the woman that waited for him for the whole life and he never came back? Who was that person? How many times did she have her heart broken? Yet, this is very important, even in the very last life of Vesantara, he had to give up Charlie and Kanha to Chuchok. And when the wife found out, what did she say? Did she get mad? No. She says, I don't like it, but I understand. And my job is to support you. So I support you in your journey. It hurts to give up the 2 children that I love the most, but I have to do it. So I anumodhana with you. Each life where he says, hey, I'm going to go become a monk now for the rest of my life. She never says, no, stay with me, my love. Be my love and stay with me. Be my husband, you promised. Every life she says, anumodana. I hope that you go and achieve your goals. Every life. Do you know how hard that is? to always put your needs second, to always support someone else and live for someone else. That's why I don't think anyone could do that. Even a mother who supports their children, that's for one life. Then next life, you have a mother too, and they support you. But in this case, this is a woman that supported her man every life. Then you have Thevatat, who challenged the Bodhisattva every life. And if you lose, you go to hell. So he had to go to hell, and he achieved good things, but had to go to hell also. Who else would be willing to do that? Who else would willing to be race against Michael Phelps every time and lose every time? Who else would be willing to do that for your whole life? No one. After a while, you would give up. That's how you know that Thevatat had very strong sense of will. Now, the last thing that to show you why Thevatat was not pure evil, when he wanted to kill the Buddha, which he really tried to do, after all of that and he failed, he decided to exile himself to a different town, a different temple with his own students. And he had hundreds and thousands of students. Now, he realized that he was wrong. And he says, I want to go ask for forgiveness from the Buddha. Well, the Buddha had said, Thevatat will never come see me again. He will never set foot in this temple again. And Thevatat says, no, I have to go apologize. I have to go ask for forgiveness before something happens. And they said, well, the Buddha had said, if you step your foot onto the ground will absorb you and you will die. And he says, I don't care. I have to go apologize. Well, he had a trick. He was very smart. He said, well, if you guys carry me, my feet will never touch the ground. So if you carry me into Wat Jetawana, I can go apologize to the Buddha, ask for his forgiveness, and he'll give me his forgiveness. So they carried him. But after many days, they got to a point where everyone fell asleep, and he's sitting on the thing. I don't know what the story was. Maybe he had to go pee. Maybe he was stretching his legs. But the very second that his foot touched the ground, he got absorbed by the earth. Now, that's not the point of my story, though. The point of my story is the very end. After his feet get sucked in, his hips, his stomach, his chest, his shoulders, all that's left is his neck, and he's almost dead. As his last action on earth, he makes a promise. He says, with the last thing that I own on this earth being my own head, I would like to offer my head to the Buddha as an offering, as an apology, as repentance. I know it sounds weird, but if you really think about it, in that last moment where you're getting sucked in by the earth, do you have time to think about all these things? All you're thinking, if he was really a selfish, evil person, the only thing he would think about is, I'm dying, I'm sad, I'm scared, I'm worried. But all he thought about was, I'm wrong, I need to fix it. So then, he says, he makes the offering. After he made the offering, he died. And now he's in the lowest hell possible. However, it is said that one day, the next day that he is reborn, he will be a Pancheka Buddha, which means a Buddha that doesn't teach. So if you think about it, if he's going to get to become a Buddha, then how could he be so evil? Even us who are not that evil, we probably won't get to become a Buddha. So that tells you that this guy actually did a lot of good. Now, in conclusion, the reason that I brought this up was, as people on this earth, we live in an earth that is a social construct. There's family members, there's friends, there's employees, there's people all around you. Oftentimes, we only want to look at the popular people, the people who are getting awards, the people, like for example, in a movie. When you watch a movie, who do you remember? You remember the main actors, right? Like for example, you think about Star Wars, who do you remember? Well, you remember there's Carrie Fisher, who was Leia. You remember Harrison Ford. You remember, for example, Luke Skywalker. You remember the main people. But do you remember the actor that played Chewbacca? Do you remember the people who played R2-D2? Do you remember who played like the mother, the father?
Who was the lighting coach? Who was the producer? Who was the guy who took the video? Nobody knows. But all those people were very important. And so, in the chantings in the morning, there's one verse that they say we should contemplate every day. Our lives, we rely on other people. We should make it so that it is easy for them to take care of us. We should not make their lives harder when they try to make our lives easy. That means, in this life, have we forgotten about our mothers, our fathers? Have we forgotten about our friends? Have we forgotten about people who have taken care of us? People who have supported us? Our teachers? Do we mainly live for ourselves and our own selfishness? Or do we help them, care for them, take care of them, appreciate them? Oftentimes we tend to live and only care about ourselves, care about our pleasure, care about our fun, care about what I want, what I need. How often
Do you do things for other people, help other people, support other people, care for other people, sacrifice for other people? And that is the meaning of selflessness. When you want to let go of your ego, you have to not place yourself above, but learn how to place other people above. And so, in conclusion for this sermon, I would ask that we take a minute to think about all the people that helped us get to where we are. And without them, we wouldn't be here. The more you think about those people that helped you get here, and the less you think about how you got here, the more chances you will have to improve yourself and have happiness in the future. So I thank you for your time to listening, and I anumotana with you for your effort.